Super Bowl 59 is now in the books, and what a performance by the Philadelphia Eagles. I could probably sit up here for hours and talk to you about how they got here and talk to you about their season as a whole and just everything that has to do with this game, but we don't have the time for that. I want to focus on the side of the ball that made this game feel like it was never even a contest, and that was the defense for the Eagles. Now, I'll just hop right into it. Vic Fangio's game plan this week wasn't anything out of the ordinary for him. In fact, it never really is. He's not a guy that's known to change his defensive game plan week to week depending on the matchup. He's going to run his defense. And I will also say that there are some guys out there that understand the language of the Fangio defense a whole lot better than I do. The first guys that come to mind are like Cody Alexander or Honest NFL. So if you want to go check out their work to get more granular on this stuff, by all means, go ahead. I just want to talk about this one game in specific for the most part today. As I mentioned, the main thing that Fangio does is he just asks his players to execute his stuff, and boy did they. So I want to structure this by talking about certain players and player groups, and I'll get to Cooper DeJean specifically later on, but I want to start with the most obvious one from Sunday. That's the front four. But for the Eagles, it's more of a front eight. Not because they play with 8 down linemen, but just more so because they have 4 viable interior defensive linemen that they can put out there at any point, and they also have 4 viable edge rushers that they can put out there at any point. So while they're only going to put 4 down at a time, they can keep rotating these guys in and out constantly and keeping their legs fresh to get after the quarterback. It's the same strategy they took in 2017 when they won the Super Bowl. And I could do a whole episode on Howie Roseman's tenure as a GM and everything that he's done there, but that's not why I'm here. When I said that there were 4 viable edge rushers, I'm not even including Bryce Huff, who they just paid a ton of money to this offseason. He was a healthy scratch in the Super Bowl. They gave him $51 million and he's a healthy scratch in the Super Bowl. But it doesn't matter because Nolan Smith took a massive leap in year 2. Josh Sweat and Brandon Graham are who they are. And Jalix Hunt, a 3rd-round rookie out of Houston Christian University, has somehow taken all the raw tools that he showed as a prospect and converted them into being a useful NFL player in year 1. The main thing that I'm trying to say here is that the constant investment that the Eagles pump into the trenches on both sides of the ball is what makes this iteration of the Eagles so great. And you could really feel that on Sunday. Let's get into that a little bit. Mahomes was pressured on 47% of his dropbacks on Sunday, and that includes garbage time. If you exclude the 4th quarter, that number goes up to 53%. For reference, the Seattle Seahawks were the worst pass protecting unit in the NFL this past season, and even they only surrendered a 38% pressure rate over the course of the year. And I'm sure you've all seen this stat by now that the Eagles didn't blitz. It's true, the Eagles did not send a single blitz on Sunday. Kind of. They did send a blitz on a play that got called back due to OPI, but that is the only time all game that they sent 5 or more rushers. There were 2 plays where they sent Bond on a simulated pressure and they dropped off the opposite side defensive end. So if you want to call that a blitz, by all means. But no plays that actually counted contained a rush of 5 or more players from the Eagles. But that kind of just makes my point for me. This was just an ass kicking up front. They didn't even use that many stunts or games or really anything. It was just straight 4-man rushes where Smith, Sweat, Hunt, even 36-year-old Brandon Graham were just dog-walking Tooney and Jawan Taylor back into Mahomes. I mean, yeah, the interior guys played really well too, especially Milton Williams, who, Godspeed to him, is going to get a bag this offseason. But the pocket constantly collapsing around the edge made this offense completely untenable. And I could go on and on and on about this, but I just want to hammer the point home because it's very important to understand this when we talk about the back end of the defense and how that functioned on Sunday night. Now, coming back to Vic Fangio for a minute, if you know anything about his defenses, they don't run a lot of very aggressive coverages. They kind of like to put an umbrella on everything and then let the DBs come rally and tackle. And Sunday night was more of the same, but if you've noticed, on occasion, the safeties would come up and muddy things up in the intermediate areas of the field like they did on this play. I believe this one is either cover 3 or 1 robber, but what happens here is there's some miscommunication about which safety is supposed to carry number 3 vertical, which is Travis Kelce on this play, and that leaves the deep middle of the field completely vacated. But Mahomes at this point in the game has been under pressure so much that he doesn't trust his line in front of him to hold up long enough to let this thing rip, and he ends up taking a sack. Then on the very next play, there's this long developing flood concept that has potential, but once again, the pocket collapses on Mahomes. The Eagles pass rush completely neutered any chance the Chiefs had an explosive pass game on Sunday, regardless of the shell coverages Fangio likes to run. But coming into this game, we kind of knew that the Chiefs wanted to run this short, quick, methodical, efficient passing game, and that the design of Fangio's defense was going to let them do that. So why couldn't the Chiefs get the short passing game going the way that they have for the last 2 years now? Well, there's a few reasons. Vic's coverage menu really didn't change this game. In fact, it got less quote-unquote aggressive. He ran more cover 4 and cover 6 variations than he has on average this year. But if you watch their quarters in their cover 6 from this game, these safeties are not concerned at all about getting beat deep. You can see this from the second drive of the game where the Chiefs are trying to get Kelce open on this classic Seattle or sail route. And since he sees quarters, he's going to try and sit in this deep hook to curl area, something that he did successfully in the Super Bowl just 2 years ago. But this time, Bond and Blankenship bracket this beautifully. That's not actually bracket coverage. I just wanted to use alliteration there because I thought it sounded cool. But anyways, despite having quarters responsibilities, the safeties in this game were very active in the intermediate areas of the field. Another thing about Fangio not blitzing is that he wanted 7 or more bodies in coverage at all times to reduce the open area on the field and make the windows that Mahomes was throwing to a little bit smaller. And then he wanted his DBs who were coming from depth to trigger really, really hard on quick out and in breakers like Quinyon Mitchell does right here. This was early in the second quarter with the Chiefs backed up on their own goal line. Kelce's almost setting a pick for Noah Gray here as they're trying to manufacture some yak the same way they've done all season. And they're counting on Oren Burks to try and fight over this to get to his man and get caught behind the play. But he just calmly passes this off and stays with Kelce in case he flashes to the inside. And Mitchell comes flying downhill on the first sight of the pick to blow this play up for minimal gain. My point here is that even though the game that Fangio called would suggest that they were trying to put a roof on everything, the DBs were not playing with any concern that they were going to get beat over the top, and that's in large part because the pass rush on the Eagles side was not giving the Chiefs any time for that to happen. Even on plays where the Eagles sat back and gave the Chiefs a ton of room to operate in the quick game, the pass rush was still getting home, just like on this play. It's almost to the end of the first half, and the Chiefs are backed up on their own goal line, so the Eagles are just sitting back in basic cover 6, giving them a whole bunch of space over the middle of the field to operate. But Josh Sweat manhandles Joe Thuney so quickly that even though Mahomes has his man clearing Bond here, he doesn't get his base underneath him and makes an inaccurate pass that gets picked off. So that right there is kind of how the front destroyed the entire game, and Josh Sweat was the man on fire Sunday night. But there's another player that I wanted to talk about who made this whole operation work, and that is, of course, Cooper DeJean. We all saw the pick 6, and I'll start with that because it was the most monumental play of the game, and it was the moment that you could tell Mahomes' brain was completely broken by this defense. I can't tell if this is a sprint out or if he's just bailing because he saw a stunt, not even a successful one, I might add. But if it's the latter, then you know he was seeing ghosts. If it's the former, then, well, this is why I hate sprint outs. Regardless, it immediately condenses the playing field and squeezes these windows more than the Eagles already had been. Not to mention that Quinyon Mitchell being megged, which means man everywhere he goes, on the backside of trips here, means that DeAndre Hopkins' route is going to bring yet another body into an already crowded picture. And because the route distribution ends up so congested, smart players like DeJean can just rove around and read the eyes of the quarterback and jump almost any route. Combine that with, frankly, a baffling decision by Patrick Mahomes, and the birthday boy makes the play of his life here. But the main thing that I want to talk about is what DeJean allows his teammates to do by playing the role that he plays. One of his main jobs that he's done all season is following around the motion man pre-snap. One of my favorite plays from this year was watching him track Jamar Chase's motion all over the play and completely blowing this one up on 4th and 1. And he's continued to follow guys around as the nickel corner pre-snap, and that makes everyone else's job easier. If he can chase the guy all over the formation because he's athletic and smart enough to do so, guys don't have to constantly bump over a gap or change responsibilities 1 second before the ball is snapped. And that was especially important coming into this game, knowing how much the Chiefs love to move around Xavier Worthy to either use him as eye candy or to swing the ball out to him in the flat. This one here is just a run play up the middle, but DeJean is notably following Worthy to the other side of the play pre-snap and then passing off the wheel route post-snap. Then on this play, he sees Pacheco motion into the backfield, and that makes the formation 2x2, and this changes the play strength to the field side of the formation. So he books it over there to make sure everyone else's alignment is correct, and it makes everyone else's job easier. And then we have one of my favorite plays of the game here in the second quarter, where the Chiefs are going to try to set up a screen to Travis Kelce. Now, as I mentioned, Josh Sweat had been a huge problem for them, so they decided to have Kelce chip him and then give him a free rush up the field, only for them to dump a pass off to Kelce right behind him. The problem is that Zach Bond is responsible for Kelce, so you need something to take him out of the play. What the Chiefs have is Xavier Worthy running a slide route, hoping that this eye candy pulls Bond out of the play and gives Kelce open grass to run to. But Bond doesn't budge, and that's because he knows his rookie slot corner is going to run stride for stride with the fastest man in the NFL, and he can completely eliminate the screen threat to end this play entirely. The way that Fangio has weaponized the skill set of Cooper DeJean has been super fun to watch, and it's a pretty large part of why they were able to bring the Lombardi back to Philadelphia. Oh, yeah, and the run game. The Chiefs didn't really try to run the ball at all, mostly because they were chasing the scoreboard the entire game. But shout out my draft guy in 2023, Moro Wajomo, for shooting the A-gap and blowing up this one run. And shout out to Zach Bond for somehow mastering the off-ball linebacker position in his first year ever there. Check out this nifty shoulder dip he does to slip this block and make a stop here. That's all. All right, everyone, and that's all I got. Shout out to the Eagles on a great offseason turnaround. At the way last season ended, for them to go into the offseason and for them to completely rebuild that defense, the additions of Quinyon Mitchell, of Cooper DeJean, of Zach Bond have been just monumental for that defense. And the hirings of Vic Fangio and Kellen Moore, Nick Sirianni and Howie Roseman deserve a ton of credit for turning this thing around. The Saquon Barkley addition obviously was massive for this team. I know he was pretty quiet in the Super Bowl, but Offensive Player of the Year, 2,000-yard season, best rushing team in the NFL. You can't take that away from the Eagles and what they got out of Saquon Barkley this year. And Jalen Hurts, the Super Bowl MVP. You know, there's a lot of people that will nitpick his game and talk about the things that he doesn't do, but he's a Super Bowl champion, a Super Bowl MVP at 26, and you can't really take that away from him. So congrats to him and congrats to the Philadelphia Eagles on what was an incredible season. And thank you all for watching, and until next time.